Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our last live elementary cohort. Be sure to log into 81- and ask your questions, add your comments, and we will address them as we go through this Google Hangout. At this time, I'm going to ask our participants to introduce themselves and to give a brief synopsis of their lesson, telling us about the content and the tools that they use to teach it. And we're going to go in order of the way that the teachers presented today.
My name is Angie Nelson. I teach 5th grade at Pinecrest, and my students did, we're Lucy School, so we were doing research, argumentative essay research, and while we're doing that, we got into our groups and were researching our topics, and then we were making Google Slides from our topics using what a colleague had shown me, the Oreo writing process to do that.
Can you see me? I'm Candace Ellis. I teach 1st grade, and today we used the Sketch app, and we were working on time. The kids had a picture of an analog clock with no hands, and they were using flashcards that had the digital time and the analog time with a partner, and one partner called out the time as the other partner made it on the analog clock on the Sketch app.
Hi, my name is Heather Howard, and I teach kindergarten here at Pinecrest. And today my students were using the app called ChatterPix, and they've been learning a lot about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and they use that app to create kind of like a poster or a video about those presidents.
I'm Shanelia Rome. I teach 4th grade here, and we were learning about the Bill of Rights, so I assigned each student an amendment or a part of an amendment, and they worked with partners to use Puppet Pals to create a skit about their amendment.
Thank you, ladies. I'm sure other teachers are interested in how you prepared for your lesson today. So would you please share that with us?
Well, to prepare to working with Google Slides, my class had to have their email addresses. So the first thing that we did is, as a class, we set up their email addresses and practiced getting in and out of their email. And they sent me emails, and I responded to their emails. And then we actually did a Google Docs together. And then after we did that, and they could see how the Google Drive worked, then we got into groups to do our Google Slides together.
We break the lesson up into mini parts. The first part was me showing them the Sketch app and just practicing with the tools, just learning the tools, and we were actually going to do a shape lesson. And as we were working with the Sketch tools, we noticed that they had arrows, which was perfect for clock hands. So that's when we kind of decided to do a clock lesson for today. So the kids actually kind of helped me discover some of the tools. And so we practiced using the tools, and then the next day I sent them a photo of the blank analog clock. And so we practiced making the hands on the clock. And then the next day we practiced using the keyboard tool for the digital time. And then we practiced with partners one day with a flashcard, so we just did step by step each day, learning the tools and using the different components, and then practicing with partners with the flashcards. So we just did it many steps each day.
My class also did the same as Candace. We broke it up into parts. First, they learned how to use the iPad and how to handle it and how to care for it. And then they learned about presidents through read-alouds and videos. And then we used the app ChatterPix, and they just learned how to basically use the app and what functions it had.
To prepare for this lesson, I looked at what we were learning next, and I thought about what way would I teach this or have them to show me what they knew without an iPad, and I thought, well, let's make a skit. So I looked then to the Puppet Pals app because we've used it before, and it just fit real well with what we were doing this time.
Thank you. Your lessons were wonderful today, and we had a lot of positive comments. And speaking of comments, please don't forget to add your questions or comments to 81-. Ladies, when you think about the technology and the strategies and the approach that you took, what do you think went well in your lesson? What were you really pleased about?
I was really pleased at how well my kids collaborated with each other and they worked cooperatively. Even though some of them had different opinions, they were able to see each other's sides. So when they actually started creating their slides, they could have one opinion and then possibly have a rebuttal slide at the end. So their collaboration was the best part of it.
I really liked the Sketch app. It was age appropriate and it was user friendly, and it didn't tend to hang up like some of the apps that we've used before. Also, it had multiple tools, and so they were able to draw using the hands and also using the keyboard. And going from the tools to the keyboard was pretty easy for them. And for the few children that couldn't do the keyboard with the digital, one of the tools was a pen, so they were able to write the digital time if they couldn't figure out the keyboard tool. So it kind of had a variety of things that they could use to kind of meet their level and where they were.
I like how the ChatterPix app is very simple and my students were able to use it independently. And I also had 4 technology leaders, and they kind of just helped teach everyone else in the class how to use the app if they did need help. But they were able to use it very independently and knew what to do.
I also think that my students worked well together. They were willing to help each other and to solve their problems on things that might have come up and how they were preparing for their skit. And I also liked how they were very creative. A lot of them were able to use Puppet Pals and come up with a scenario that was just very interesting.
I think you really helped us in explaining the reasons that you used it, the tools that you used, and we saw some really good things. I heard a lot of comments about people saying they could take things away from this that they could use in their lesson. Was there anything that was a surprise to you today? Anything that surprised you about your lesson?
I think what surprised me most is I was a lot more relaxed after everybody got in the room than I thought I would be, and the children did a really good job of staying on task and working together.
I was very surprised that some of the students stepped up, and I had told them that their partners were their teacher. But today they really stepped up and I saw them helping each other, and even the students who were not as confident yesterday when we practiced today, they were much more confident, so I saw them reaching over and helping when they needed to. So that was a good surprise.
I was really surprised that a lot of my students were able to talk for a full 30 seconds about Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, and they stayed on topic, and I think they really did a great job today.
I was surprised how my students worked well with all those people in the room. You know, they didn't seem nervous or anything. They were just their regular selves.
Sometimes I hear teachers say that it just takes too long. It's too much trouble to plan for a lesson like those that you taught today, lessons that use technology to teach their standards. What would you say to those teachers?
I think the initial setup of just using Google would take a little bit of time, but now once my students have been set up on Google, they can do docs, drive, slides, sheets. They can use any of the Google products now that they have an email address. And we've even used it to get into our Quizlet accounts where I put study guides on for them. They can actually access Quizlet using their Google account so that they can use that instead of having to memorize a new password.
I feel like part of the apprehension is just myself not being very familiar with a lot of the apps, but once I kind of got on and played around with it along with my kids right beside me, we discovered things about it, and they were teaching me as I was teaching them, and the students really catch on fast to things, and once they figure out, like Ms. Nelson said, how to work the app, then the lessons just kind of, the ideas just start kind of flowing as you're doing the lessons. And we were going to do a shape lesson, but just playing around with the tools, we figured out we could do a time lesson. So it's just kind of playing around with it, and then you'll learn as you go.
Well, in the beginning, I was really kind of nervous about having my class use technology and using the iPads, but then I realized how engaged they were and how they really just enjoy learning using the iPads, and they would much rather, do that than just watch a video or have me just explain things to them.
I think even though it's a little bit of time at the front end of it, it's all worth it in the end, because I've learned that using Google Classroom and getting them set up, it took a while in the beginning, but now that they're in it, we can just go, and now it makes things so much easier and smoother for me.
Thank you. Those were good words of advice.
I think it's just being confident as a teacher to give them the opportunity to do it, because they can do it. And I feel like at the beginning I was hesitant, but it's just giving them the opportunity. And of course, taking the time to teach them how to handle them properly and giving them practice at handling them properly, and then just providing opportunities of things that they'll feel confident doing, and just reviewing a lot and practicing, the things over and over, and just giving them the opportunity to have them in their hand, and because they're going to teach you as well as you teaching them with them.
And I also think you need to have a lot of patience as a teacher, and I also encourage my students to have a lot of patience with the iPad, because when we first started, some of the apps were kind of locking up and freezing, and then they would start crying and getting all upset. So I was like, well, just be patient with it, and you'll be able to do it. So just encouraging your students to be patient with technology and just being confident, like Candace said.
Okay, I believe we have something from 81 Dash.
Yes, we have a question for Candace. Candace, if you use Sketch and have a picture on it, does it stay on there when you open and close the app?
Well, sometimes it's still there from the previous day, but if not, there says in the corner, it says album, and it says Sketch album, and you hit Sketch album, and it pulls up all the photos that you've worked with in Sketch. So yes, once you put the photo in there, it pulls up automatically in the Sketch album.
Okay, good. Thank you. I've also noticed that it will show up in your photos. Yeah, it's there unless you do something else with it. So you still have your original as well as the one that you made. Okay. Um, when you think about what you did today, have you thought about, are you going to extend this activity, or there things you're going to do with it from here, or have you thought about the way you can use the same tools for other things, or how you're going to vary your activity? Can you share your thoughts on where you're going to go from here?
Well, to begin with, my kids have already said they want to add pictures. And since we use the iPad to do Google Slides, some of the resources were limited. And so after we get all of our text on Google Slides, we're going to go to the computer lab, and I'm going to let them go to Google Slides on the computers, and they're going to insert some pictures and just add some animation to it, like you can on PowerPoint and Keynote. In addition, I'm going to have them choose 2 of their reasons to support their opinion, and I'm going to let them do a 30-minute timed writing for their practice for the Aspire test.
Today, most of the students were working with time to the hour flashcards. Some of the students did have time to the half hour. So as an extension to the students working to the hour, I'm going to give them cards in their bags to the half hour. And then my students who are ready, I'm going to go ahead and introduce other time increments such as quarter till, quarter past, just to get them with time. As far as the actual sketch out, I'm going to go back and try to do some pictures of shapes around the school, and they're going to use the pen app to outline the plane shapes found on a 3-dimensional shape. So that's kind of using the sketch out for a different math lesson that we're going to be doing coming up.
To extend this lesson, I would like to show my students how to airdrop, and then they can airdrop their project to their peers at their table and share what they've done with each other. I would also like to use ChatterPix again in the future, maybe with like book characters or maybe for biographies, because I think the app is great since you can draw a mouth and you can just give the character a voice by recording your own.
To extend this lesson, I'll have all my kids airdrop me their skits, and I'll put them together in an iMovie. Then I'll post it into Google Classroom so that they can always go back to watch their skits in a whole line. And I'll use Puppet Pals again. We've used it in science already. We use it in social studies today, so I'll probably use it in language arts next, just to show the versatility of the app.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, this was not the first time that you used technology in your classroom. You worked up to this point, and I imagine that there are people who watch it and say, sure, everything went great, blah, blah, blah. But we all know that when we first start, there are some agonies that we have to deal with. Would you mind sharing with us some of the agonies that you encountered when you first started using technology, so they'll kind of understand and know that it's natural to go through that?
Well, one glitch that we kind of ran into was the fact that we were using Google Slides on the iPad rather than on the Chromebook. And as Cindy explained to me, that Google and Apple, they work together, but they don't always play nicely together. So sometimes it would glitch and it would freeze up, but it didn't happen very often. And we found out that if only one person in the group was typing at a time, that it kind of prevented some of those glitches. And then, like I said, some of the features aren't there on the iPad, but we're just going to go to the computer lab to add those features when we get the text finished.
The first app that we ever did as a class with the iPads was the Doodlebug app, and I just found that it kept kind of freezing and locking up, and the kids were getting frustrated. So I don't know if it's because we had so many students working on it at one time, but we finally just kind of stopped using Doodlebug, and we found the Show Me app, and it was very similar. So now we work with the Show Me app. One thing that was an obstacle was just keeping the students on the app that you were working on, or when you were trying to find the app on the screen, just an easy way of showing them how to swipe. And so we kind of found some app markers, like there's one app at the top of our home page that has a star, and you slide it one time and there's another, like it's a shape. So I just found, okay, go to the screen that has the star at the middle. So just finding some kind of marker, so when you're flipping through your screens that they know where you are, and just getting them to really stay on the app that you're working on and not just kind of playing around and wanting to explore. So that was kind of a glitch, is just getting them to stay from exploring too much outside the app that you are working on, and then just giving them markers on the screen to find, like the sketch out, you know, just find the red feather with the S, because some of them still can't read the app name. So just, you know, being creative at finding ways that they stay with you as you're flipping through the iPad, especially when you're doing things whole group.
When my class first started using the iPads, we were using the app called Pix and Tell, and I really loved the app, and they were doing a how-to book, but then we found that there were many glitches, like the screen kept freezing up and things were just not working right, so we decided to use ChatterPix, and I enjoyed that a lot better. But one thing with ChatterPix, I noticed that the camera would sometimes freeze, so just sometimes just things would go wrong, but we would just find a different way to do things.
One of the problems that we've run into is that since a lot of the kids have tablets at home, each tablet has a different way to do things. And so when they come to school with the iPads, you know, somebody takes a screenshot this way and somebody will take a different screenshot. So we really had to go through and kind of get together on, okay, when you take a screenshot, let's try to do it this way. That way it looks the same, you know, regardless of who's taking the screenshot and who you're airdropping into. Other than that, a lot of the things have been trying to log into all these programs with all these different usernames and passwords and teacher codes. That's been very difficult to deal with, but we found a lot of them you can log in with your Google account, so that makes it a lot easier.
Okay, thank you. Angie, we've had a question on 81-. Someone would like to know, when you use the iPads, did you have Chrome on the iPad and go through the Google Chrome app, or did you go through the Drive app on your iPad?
Well, when we got our iPads in January, we already had the Google Sheets, Google Chrome, Google Drive, Google Docs. We already had all of those on there, and so they were kind of all over the place. So the first thing my class did is they put all of the Google apps into a Google folder so that we could find them quickly, and we just went straight into Google Sheets from the Google folder.
Okay, thank you. I guess maybe they were wondering if it was glitchy because you didn't go through Chrome. I don't know. I always go through Drive, so I don't know. That would be something that would be interesting to find out, whether or not that would make a difference. I'd like to encourage all of you who observed, and those of you who didn't, I hope that each of you are taking something away from this, and I want you to know that you can try new things, and that you have a lot of support. You have your people in your school who have done these lessons. You have your school technology leader, your media specialist, you have Kitty, you have me. There's always someone who is willing to help you. And, you know, you don't look at the huge picture. You look at your end product, and then you think about the baby steps that are going to take you there. And believe me, when you break it down into the baby steps, you can all do it. It's not as difficult and as scary as you might think, as these ladies can attest to. Ladies, lastly, any last comments? You did a beautiful job on your lessons, and you lived through it. Anything you'd like to say? Any word of advice to anybody? Well, Well, if not, then I'd like to thank you for joining us and joining these brave young women today. And as I said, we're always here to help you in any way that we can. Let me remind you that 81- will remain open. If you have any other questions or comments, we will monitor it for the next day or so. So if you think of the question and you forgot to ask it during the Hangout, please go ahead and do so. We'll be glad to answer that. So thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And this will be our final elementary cohort for this year. Have a great afternoon.